जा सो जा वरना हंसता आ जाएगा।
Tumbar basically revolves around two things: greed and human relationships. If I were asked to sum up the philosophy of film in one scene, I would approximately refer to this scene. I will specifically analyze this scene later. For now, let's decode this deeply and philosophically abundant film scene by scene. And obviously, spoilers ahead. If you haven't watched the movie, why haven't you?
डर रहा है? मुझे शुरू भी नहीं हुआ।
Tumbad, a coastal village in Maharashtra, is blessed or maybe cursed by rains all year round, a fact which magnificently blends into the mythology of the film. The screen opens up with a quote by Mahatma Gandhi about greed. The quote simply implies the overall theme of the movie. This is a sticky and clever method. When you're done watching its orthodox climax, your mind will definitely toss some random scenes which had personally moved you. Your mind will keep wandering until that meaningful quote tosses up and gives sense to all the happenings in the film. If this quote was added in the closing titles of the film, then you might have not gone through the whole movie to make sense, and you might have never thought so deeply about this movie ever. Subsequently, on the screen, a wall art of goddess could be seen with a man's voice in the background narrating the events during the creation of Brahman, the universe, to a second person, who later turns out to be his son.
जब ब्रह्मांड की शुरुआत हुई तो देवी ने इसी कोख से 16 करोड़ देवी देवताओं को जन्म दिया।
The tale goes like this. The universe was created by a goddess of plenty who gave birth to 16 crore other gods and goddesses. The earth was her womb and she had endless reserves of gold and grain for the mankind. Her firstborn and also her favorite was Hastar. Though born a celestial being, Hastar's intentions were less than noble. He desired to gain control over the goddess's prosperity. While he was successful to have the gold, his 16 crore siblings declared war on him as soon as he reached for the grain. Weakened and unable to sustain their attacks, Hastar's mother saved him and contained him back in her womb. But there was a price. He would never be worshipped and his name would be erased and censored from any text for the rest of eternity. Consequences set in motion after a Konkanastha Brahmin family builds a temple dedicated to the firstborn of the goddess.
पर एक दिन हमारे ही पूर्वजों ने उसे याद किया और उसके नाम का मंदिर बना दिया।
The first question in the viewer's mind would be, is Hastar an actual character of Hindu mythology? Well, if you would look up in the sacred Hindu texts and scriptures, you won't find any being named Hastar. Yes, there is no known mention of Hastar in Indian mythology, which arguably plays well with Hastar's curse in Tumbar. So was he a part of Hindu mythology? The answer might lie in its theory. According to Tumbar, the goddess's womb is the earth and created 16 crore gods. The Hindu cosmology has three predominant theories of creation in Vedas. First, Hiranyagarbha Sakta states a golden egg was born in the universe and was the Lord and established earth and heaven, which fundamentally doesn't go along with the Tumbar's theory. Second, Devi Sakta states a goddess is all, the creator, the created universe, the feeder, and the lover of the universe. It is also equivalent to the goddess of prosperity in Tumbar. But if we consider the other statement in Tumbar, which signifies the presence of 16 crore gods, then we have to step back. The number is not even nearer to the total number of deities in Hinduism. Yet, study would be partial if we don't mention the third philosophy in Vedas, Nasiddhya Sukta, which shockingly doesn't state but asks, who created the universe? Does anyone really know? God came afterwards with the creation of this universe, and whether it can be ever known. Hinduism is expansive and has been variable. Deity Indra, who was worshipped vehemently during ancient period, is seldom worshipped today. Thus, whether Hastar existed in Hindu mythology or not is up to the believer. The roots of Hastar originates from an old regional book of tales, Anodki Disha, Part 3, by Narayan Dharav, in its second story, Aji. Narayan Dharav, a popular Marathi writer, was especially known to mix up the Hindu rituals and the horror stories, which used to paralyze the locals by fear due to its realistic nature. Hence this tale was predominant in Tumbad and region around it.
The other part of it was making sure to not have, jump scares.
Because startling is not scary. The stories that we hear from grandmothers, the folk things that we hear, they keep us awake at night. Startling is not.
As I already said, the movie revolves around two aspects, greed and relationships. So let's dive into the plot of the movie. In spite of the repeated warnings by his mother, Vinayak returns to Tumbad somewhat 15 years later in search of the ancestral treasure. He travels to his first home in search of his grandmother. Cursed to live as a demon, he finds his grandmother still alive in a creepy manner. He interrogates her about the gold coins without a shadow of fear, which thoroughly represents his ill desires. Vinayak is seen telling her that the only talent he has is greed.
ये तो गुण है मुझ में
The cursed old lady warns Vinayak about how entering the mansion is his choice, but later on, everything is a fate. Turning a deaf ear towards the advice, he enters the mansion and successfully locates the arcade. What is scary is not the demon here, it is greed and the black void asking us for more and more. If we examine the character arc of Vinayak, we can notice his fear lifting from his old helpless cursed grandmother, which is a natural fear we all carry during our lifetime. But what we see later is Vinayak turning cold-hearted, becoming unnatural, and seeking every harsh and problematic way to fulfill his never-ending desires. The demon was Vinayak himself. The difference greed has brought in the younger and elder Vinayak is ghastly. Vinayak, who used to only care about his mother and brother during childhood, turned into a man who didn't spare a thought for his mom after successfully returning from Tumbad. You can see her old mom passing by, and you can see how little he cared about her, that he didn't even recall her later words in movie, except once. At this stage, Vinayak's greed has dominated his affection for relationships. He is physically involved with a woman other than his wife. He is preparing his son for a deadly task without paying attention to his young age. There is no healthy conversation between him and his family. He literally had no response or celebration after the liberation of India. His young son once awares him of the fact that they have enough and there is no need to crave for more. Listening to this, he suddenly recalls his mother and faints. This scene, which I had mentioned in the beginning, beautifully signifies his behavior. It is when Pandurang, son of Vinayak, returns from Tumbad after his first ever stint in hunting for gold. He gives his mother a gold coin chocolate his father has bought. Admiring the chocolate, she says,
पापा ने दिए उनको भी पसंद है
बाबा को तो कुछ पसंद नहीं।
तो फिर किस लिए
She raised a thoughtful question. What's the point of money if we have no interest or dreams to invest in? Money, which he thought would heal his poverty that he had suffered in his childhood, had actually worsened his quality of life. Plus the process he was becoming rich, he was also losing his closed ones one after another. So what's the point of asking more and more?
तो जिंदगी भर चलेगा
It corresponds with the Hindu philosophy, which says craving for unneeded ultimately leads to untimely destruction. Ravan craved for Mother Sita's love, Duryodhan yearned for the throne, and our dear Vinayak Rao craved for the gold coins, which are in the end nothing but a metallic symbol. And so did Hastar. So ultimately he is seeking that big doll, food. Gradually we also notice his son continuing this chain of greed after he suggests his dad to steal the bag of the Hastar instead of aiming for few coins, which in fact is even more evil idea. Yet it failed. After realizing how greed has converted his dad into a demon, he eventually breaks the chain by refusing to take the bag of coins in the end, and successfully breaks the chain of misfortune and curse which had surfaced his family for generations.
जा 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 ना
Another theory says, all those who worship Hastar find themselves caught in the cycle of greed that repeats itself generation after generation, bringing misfortune and destroying families and lives. This explains the death of Sadashiv, the younger sibling to Vinayak. The very first time we see Vinayak greed for treasure is after the death of Sarkar, his father, forcing his family to leave the village. As soon as his mother orders him to pack up things, he argues about the treasure. In reply, he says,
वाड़े में जो खजाना है वो तो अपना होगा ना.
He gets so curious about the treasure that he blindly suggests his mother to interrogate about it to her cursed and vulnerable grandmother. Eventually, his mother orders him to pack the bags so that they can leave the village by the night. But things don't go that easy, because recalling the treasure is technically recalling Hastar, a god who is cursed for not being recalled. Few minutes later, his younger brother also alerts him about the curse.
खजाने की बात करना भी अशुभ है.
But Vinayak ignorantly answers it and faces the consequences. Sadashiv falls off the tree and dies, as the theory said, bringing misfortune and destroying families. The next doubt that might arise is what makes Tumbad a financial and critical success even without a single superstar and huge production company. Well, I would say it's the exceptional focus on cinematography and narration. Simple to simple conversations were given cinematic power. For example, this scene in which Vinayak and his mother is leaving Tumbad via a boat. Vinayak is asked by her mother to never return to this city. Even such a simple warning turns up into a threat. Her mom's terrified reaction tells us all about the ghastly outcomes of returning to Tumbad. We sense the fear. The music and the camera's position adds more terror to it. Who could have imagined a simple conversation between a son and a mom would end up giving us chills? The whole narration, backed by cinematography, naturally leads up to a perfect climax. This is the beauty of this movie. We saw destruction coming, but we never imagined it this way. Yet, it doesn't feel exaggerated nor underrated. The labor of 6 long years had paid off brilliantly. It was a perfect end to a perfect tale with a perfect shot. And that's what left us in a state of awe.
कण कण कोई कनक कोई फनक कानो कान दिया धन धन ये जो धनक ये जो खनक धरा छान लिया